Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors, and I'm here today to tell you why you should be tapping in jiu-jitsu class, or why you should be failing on at least a small level in life, in your career, maybe someplace. What do you think about that, Dan?
Why you should be tapping
in class.
Slash. Why you should be failing in life. How
Not failing in life. At a small level.
I was going to say perfect, because I've been failing in life lately, so it sounded
That's proof of your success.
Yeah,
You're such a failure.
For those of you out there failing in life, John's about to tell you why this is great.
It's great.
You're on the right track.
You're killing it. How you doing?
Yeah, you know.
7?
It's about 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Good, bad. Who cares?
Yeah.
Good, bad.
Yeah. I'm just asking out of tradition.
You know what? I'm actually feeling very detached from reality. Is that good? I think that's good.
It could be good.
Could be bad.
Explain
too.
why. What do you mean?
I just feel like everything's going on out there, and I'm like separate from it.
Do you feel like you're living in a computer simulation? Is that what you mean?
Well, that one I already know is happening.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel weird. I don't know. Maybe it's COVID. I got a COVID shot.
You got a vaccination?
I got a vaccination.
Nice.
Maybe that's messed me up a little bit for the week. It's feeling very dreamy. I feel like it's hard to explain. I feel like sitting at home like a ghost could come out of the ground, and I'd be like, like I just go back to reading my book or something. Like I would nothing's affecting me. Does that make sense?
Well, they're reporting
that's what I mean by
that
detached from reality.
They're finding UFOs now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Coming out,
I saw that. Again,
nobody seems that concerned
right now,
about it.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like one could land in my yard right now, and I just feel like, what the hell?
Dan,
if it was loud, I'd just turn up the TV.
I would welcome it if some other advanced civilization came and they said, you know what, we're taking over. You people are knuckleheads.
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, this is.
I'd have a lot more confidence in them than the people running the show right now.
And now might be the time where they're just like, we've been watching for a while.
Yeah.
And that we went over some sort of threshold where they're like, that's it. That is it.
You've hit a critical mass of idiots running your nations. Yeah.
We're coming down, and that's like, we're taking over. This is no good. This is no good at all.
I'm there for that. Yeah. I'll take that, or I'll take the machines taking over. AI says we're taking over. I'm there. I don't care. It has to be better than what's happening now, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. We've said everyone pictures Terminator and they're destroying us, but maybe they would just sort of.
Maybe they'd be like, you're going to eat healthy food and exercise, get oxygen. Yeah, okay. You're going to get out in nature, everybody. And it could
work.
It can't be worse.
I could go on a machine dominated chain gang or something. They're like, you need to all harvest materials for new machines. I'd be like, fine. Right?
They would probably do it, Dan, that you would have a short work day. You'd be outside. You'd be getting good.
Yes, I keep
and
my
they'd
health.
give you good nutrition. Yep. And they'd want you. Yeah, they'd probably fix it so you'd have a pretty goddamn good life.
All right. So we're all for some sort of takeover.
I'm down for definitely either aliens or AI. Either one. I'm
6 of 1.
Yeah, I'm in. Definitely. It's got to be better than this nonsense that we're experiencing now. Definitely. So I just got back from Philadelphia. Right. My son Rory went down there last weekend. So today is April 16th, Dimitri tells me, 2021. We went down there. My son competed in the Emerald City Invitational, which is sort of a professional jiu-jitsu event. He had one match, a 7-minute submission-only EBI overtime rules event, and he did great. It was fantastic. So he won. I learned a few things, Dan. One thing I learned is the EBI rules is just a very flawed rule set.
I don't know what it is.
So you do a 7-minute round, no points are scored. If you submit the guy, you win. If you don't submit the guy, then you go into overtime. And then the overtime is basically you either operate in a back control position or an armbar position where you're lying on your back. The guy kind of has your arm and you can lock your hands together. The problem is you can So basically, Rory, I think, swept the guy, passed his guard, mounted him, got back control, tried to finish him from back control. I think the guy might have re-guarded, and then he passed the guy's guard again. Maybe got back control again, got mount at the end, and then got a mounted triangle, and then time ran out.
But none of that means anything.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
So now they're like, okay, now we're starting from scratch again. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He just dominated this person. And there's a weird thing about jiu-jitsu, Dan. When you're on somebody's back trying to finishing them, you almost use more energy than if you're defending.
Right.
Because you're pulling with your biceps and your forearms. So I was looking, I'm like, wow, Rory just expended a lot of energy. So now what happens is either whoever taps the guy faster wins, or whoever escapes faster wins. So Rory started on the guy's back, and the guy escaped, I don't know, maybe 40 seconds or something. The guy got out. And then it was Rory's turn, and then he got out very fast, 8 seconds, I think. But if he didn't happen to get out fast enough, if it took him 41 seconds to escape, he would have lost. So not a good rule set. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost seems like you could game it too. You could like just be like, I'll stall and tire the guy out, and then get really, really good at these little, at that back position, or you know what I mean? Like,
I think
instead
so,
of
Dan.
a well-rounded jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's the other thing I realized is a couple things. So we were in the locker room warming up, and there was some young guys in there who were also competing. They had quite a number of matches. It was a really nice event. And I realized, wow, there are jiu-jitsu nerds. I think they have been for some time. But so these guys don't really seem like fighters. They're these nerdy young guys, and they're pretty good at jiu-jitsu too, And like one guy went out there, and he got like a 20-second inside heel hook and won. I was like, wow, that's about as efficient as you can be. Like, to take somebody down, pass their guard, get their back, and rear naked choke them, that takes a fair amount of energy, Yeah. But if you know leg locks better than the other guy, and you get an inside heel hook, you can expend you literally don't even sweat at all, So I'm like, wow, these guys are clever. They figured out an efficient way to win here,
I think you're right. I think something about taking away the striking allows like this subculture of jiu-jitsu nerds. You don't really have like boxing nerds, right? Like, I don't think so, right? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I
Or
think
like,
you'd lose your brain cells too quickly, too, right?
MMA nerds, like I think there's something about getting hit and that aggression.
Yeah.
That stops that for some reason. But
I completely agree. That's one of the obvious insights I gained, is that this isn't fighting. I know they call it fights a lot, and I get what they're trying to do there. That's fine. But I think it's almost a mistake to look at it as fighting, because I think most males view fighting as an important attribute, whether they consciously or unconsciously acknowledge it. At some level, Dan, don't you think that my ability to fight is sort of important to my manhood, to my self-image and self-esteem?
Right, although I think a lot of people, it would be unconscious or they deny that.
Correct.
But they'd feel it.
They feel it, I think. I think
if they were, very few people that are good at fighting feel that way. You know what I mean? It's people that are not don't have experience, that are like, or
it's not important to me.
Yeah, it's not important. The people that are scared of it.
You're kind of whistling past the graveyard,
honestly,
right?
I'm not even blaming them. I'm not being aggressive. I'm saying that's a quick, easy defense mechanism to be like, well, it's barbaric to fight or something like that. Like, it's not. I'm not going to be someone who fights, and it's like, well, yeah, also you can't. So that worked out sort of well for you.
But it needs at least some sort of reckoning, right? Some sort of rationalization. Mm-hmm. So it's there unconsciously, right?
Right. But I'm interested in you. You are a jiu-jitsu guy, saying usually jiu-jitsu guys are defensive themselves about like calling it a fight, and being like, oh, it's.
Yeah. So the idea that came to me, Dan, is that it's counterproductive to think of it as fighting, because then it puts too much psychological pressure on the match. It's like, wow, if I lose this match, then at least at some level unconsciously, I'm going to think that guy's a better man than me. And that's just not the case. They just happen to be better at this game of jiu-jitsu than you. And then if you think of, that's the big idea I had was, oh, it's just a game. So when something's just a game, then you kind of open up your mind to more creativity. How can I win this game as efficiently as possible? Within the rules and the framework of this game.
And I absolutely see how calling it a fight works against that.
Definitely. Right.
Then it's just it's a clash of who can beat up who. Like that old that's a bit important that people have been talking about since first grade, right? Like who can beat up who. Yeah, that's going to put a lot more pressure than like who's going to do this game of jiu-jitsu better.
Right. You could probably apply it to boxing as well. If you look at Mayweather, he's figured out the game of boxing, right?
Yeah.
Where he's going to make it really hard for you to hit him, and he's going to hit you enough to win most of the rounds, and then he's going to win the fight, keep his brain healthy, and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. He's not, I think today or yesterday was the anniversary of Hagler Hearns.
I remember it.
You remember it?
I remember it live, yeah.
I think they said it was like, how many years ago do you think that was? Like 30 years ago?
Now that I'm thinking about it, it was so long. It might have been more.
No, it was 35 years ago,
yeah.
Dan. Holy cow. It was like 1985 or 6 or something. That's amazing, isn't it?
So how did I see it? Was it on like just TV?
I'll tell you where I saw it.
It was just on TV, right?
I believe no, it was not on TV. I went to the Orpheum in downtown Boston, the theater, and they put it up on a big movie screen, and you could watch it closed circuit television, right? CCTV. Yeah. That's what I think they called it.
Maybe I didn't see it live then. It's just been so many years that
I think if you lived around here to see it, you had to go to a venue. I don't think it was on TV.
Yeah. No, I was in New York, but I don't know that it would be any different.
I think I went to Madison Square Garden to see Hagler Leonard on the big screen. So it was actually in Madison Square Garden, and they had it up like on 4 big screens. Yeah. That wasn't as exciting a fight, but my point was Hagler Hearns. Those guys, that was a fight.
Yeah.
They were literally trying to kill each other, right?
Yeah.
That was as primal as it got. That was Mayweather doesn't box like that. No, definitely not. He's too smart for that. So those are a couple of the things I learned, Dan, that it's all a game. I think you might be able to apply that. Maybe that's what you're feeling, Dan, about life, where you're feeling detached. Like it's all some kind of dopey game, right? If you just figure out, I don't play a lot of video games, but I think you can figure out some tricks in a video game and you can beat the game, right?
Yeah, and then you're like, now what's my next move?
Yeah, now what do I do?
You got that. You save the princess.
Right.
You're like, well, now what do I do?
Is that how some of those games work? You can actually finish the game and win? Then you just throw it down and walk away?
Most of them now have a finish. Like
really?
Maybe the sports game or most of them finish now. Like there's not. It used to be that none of them finished. You'd play Space Invaders until you were dead.
Oh, right.
And it would just be your score, Pac-Man or whatever. Like,
oh, you got the top score.
Yeah.
And then that satisfied you until somebody beat your score. Then you had to go back. Yeah.
Or short out the computer. Like if you were one of these freakish guys would play like, what was it? Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And they just play until like it broke.
They broke.
Yeah. Yeah. But it would be like they'd be wearing diapers and play for 3 days or something. I never wasn't really my scene. But
you weren't that committed.
Yeah. But then they started having endings. So now I think they all do.
Thank God I don't play any video games. My life would be even more empty than it is. So the title of this podcast is You Should Be Tapping in Class. So, I have this super match coming up June 5th. So it's EBI Rules. So it's 15 minutes of submission only and then the EBI overtime rules. So I've been doing a lot of work from back control, defending, and I've been doing a lot of putting myself deep into submissions and trying to recover. So I feel like I've learned so much in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
You're going to try to not get to that round, right? If you can just get them before that.
I think so, Dan, but it's also 15 minutes, so you got to kind of manage your energy properly too, right? I'm still trying to figure out. I think the strategy is to just jiu-jitsu, try to make the other guy work harder than you, try to tire them down, if you see an opportunity, pounce on the opportunity, but don't force it. You know, you got to have a little in the tank if you get to that overtime, you know. So, yeah, it'll be a great experience. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But I feel like I've improved so much in the last month. It's awesome. Yeah. Very technical things. Yeah, that's what it all comes. See, when you're putting yourself in these positions where you have to tap, then for me, I'm able to let the pain of tapping go away. And it's like, oh, I had a tap, and it's very objective. It's very mechanical. Well, they had the distal end of the lever, and they had the fulcrum proper, and blah, blah, blah. And so how can I not let that get in that position next time? And it's a very good way to learn and improve. Right. Yeah.
And so, tell me if I'm connecting these two things properly. You're saying letting yourself tap, which, by the way, I was pretty good about that when I trained. I'd let myself.
You were strong in that area.
No, I'd let myself tap pretty often. I'd allow it. But you're saying it helps with the mindset of I'm playing this game of jiu-jitsu.
That's a good point. I didn't.
Tap, right?
Yeah, I didn't articulate that, but it does. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, I'm just playing this game, and tapping is part of it. And how do I avoid?
It's a good way to
look at it. It's like a board game that's like I landed on the wrong space or something. Like, how do I try to avoid that? Or how do I?
Or you're playing some video game, Mortal Kombat, but you have infinite lives, so you get killed, and then you just get another one.
How do I avoid that? Yeah.
Like, you don't have to worry, like, I only have 3 lives. Once I lose this last one, the game's over for me. You just have unlimited ones.
Yeah.
So when you look at it that way, yeah, it takes a lot of psychological pressure off of you. It allows you to focus mentally on the mechanics and the technical aspects. And I think it helps you manage your energy better. Because what I noticed is, now when I'm defending one of these positions like back control or armbar, I'm much more efficient. You know, I'm not overexerting. When I first started doing it, I'd have the choking arm and I'd be bridging hard. You know, the first day of a lot of this training, my upper hamstrings were killing me. It was like I had softballs lodged in there. And then I realized, I'm bridging way too hard. Like, I don't have to do that. I just bring my knee up, and, you know, I don't have to crush their hands. I just have to know where they are, make sure they're not choking me. And so you end up using your energy much, much more efficiently.
Conserving it.
Yeah.
I just had I have a memory from, jiu-jitsu memory from before it was even a Connors school. It was the Rhode Island guy, Tim
Burrill.
Burrill.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, remember when pre-Connors, when there was that Needham?
Oh, yeah, you guys, Steve Whittier, Dan McCarthy were in Needham.
Yeah.
Yep.
And in like a Taekwondo school.
Yeah,
like they didn't have class with a bunch of jiu-jitsu.
It was like an old post office.
Yeah, an old post office, Ancient days.
Yeah.
And he, way back then, he said, what I love about jiu-jitsu is it's like he said the exact thing. He said, like, it's an endless video game with infinite lives. That's what he said, like, all those years ago.
Dan, that was probably 20 years ago. That was probably 2003 or 4.
A long time ago.
Tim Burrill is a smart man. He's ahead of the game, man, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he said, and now it's sort of funny coming back. I hadn't had that memory in a long time. And now we're circled back around to it.
Right.
I think he was just saying this is what's fun about it. But you're saying there's actually it's important to approach it that way, right? Like,
I think it is.
Take that pressure off.
Well, Dan, if you think about it, let's look at the extremes. What if I went to training and I never tapped at all? Okay. Then let's look if I went and I tapped like every minute, like every interaction I got tapped. And then there's someplace in the middle. For my optimal development, I probably want to be someplace in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if I'm never tapping, then I'm probably not extending myself enough. You know what I mean? Because to develop, you have to expand your game. So you have to take some chances. You have to try something new that you haven't tried before. So if I'm never tapping, I'm probably not expanding myself enough, you know?
Right. First of all, that's why I started tapping. And then secondly, it all fits to me. It's all of a piece, right? You're like, you want to see, like, you want to get to some outcome that caused you to tap, and then just be like, how did that come about?
Right.
And how do I avoid that? And it also speaks to something which I'm sure you've touched on before, which is why it's wrong. You're going down the wrong path if you get tapped and you like slam the mat and you like storm off. It's like, no, your head's in the wrong place. Like it should just be. And I'm not blaming. I could do that, right? I mean, I don't actually, I don't act out that much, but I get the emotion of it. I get like, just like getting tapped and just being like, oh my god.
Yeah, we have one of our students. I'll say his name, George Lynch. He's a great guy, great student. But he'll be rolling, and all of a sudden I'll hear him like scream some obscenity, like when he gets tapped or something goes wrong. I mean, he screams it. I go, George, come on, man. I don't even want to say what the obscenity is, but believe me, it's an obscene obscenity as well. Yeah.
On the range of obscenities, it's one of the worst ones.
It's not one that you would find in a comic strip. It's not darn or drat.
Yeah.
It's more on the other end of things. But it's all, I don't know, it's funny, but so you got to find that
but also I get he's probably like kind of half joking. Like
he's half joking. Yeah.
So I sort of feel like, but there's guys who aren't joking at all.
No,
guys that literally storm out of the
school. I don't want to mischaracterize him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's basically joking because he gets right back in it, and like he never shies away from hard rolls or training, and he's very good, and he's getting better. It's just kind of funny that he'll do that occasionally. Yeah, he is kind of half joking.
But so I get the emotion of it. I probably wouldn't scream or slam them up, but I also would be going down the wrong path where I'd just be like, oh my god, I suck. Or, as we've said before, the optimal mindset is just you're playing this game and how'd that happen and how do you avoid it happening again. And because also if you're slamming the mat or like me just going, oh, I can't believe I got tapped, like you're not analyzing what happened, right? You're just you're too much in the emotional part of your brain, not in the analytical part of your brain. Yeah, definitely. So I think I'm doing a better job, Dan, of being in that place where I'm extending myself more. I was training today with Dennis Medina, and we were working on an armbar from the back, and man, he almost wrist locked me, and I feel bad now because I should have tapped. So he's on my back, we're starting, and he's doing like an armbar, and I started to get out, but he had my hand in the proper way where he started to wrist lock me, and I was like, ah! I grunted, and then I kind of got out of it, and then he almost armbarred me, but I got out of it. And then I was like, wow, that was really good, the wrist lock. He goes, yeah, I kind of let it. He goes, I let it go. I'm like, yeah, I should have tapped. I think he realized like I might hurt this wrist, so I think he said, yeah, wrist locks are cheap. And I go, they're not cheap. If you can wrist lock somebody, please go ahead. Yeah, definitely. I want to store that one for your upcoming sneaky wrist lock on him.
Oh,
if you start in that position.
Well, then I learned something. I'm like, I can't let him just dominate my one hand with his two hands. I got to interrupt that grip. So because of that, I'm better now than I was before this morning. So, yeah, that's a big part of it. I feel like I've done a better job of that, like putting myself in that position where I'm trying some new things. Like, so we do a lot of positional training, Dan. So today we taught doing an arm bar. When you are on back control, you're starting a back control, you're isolating one of the arms and arm barring. And we drill it, we go through it, and we said, now we're going to train from this position, but you know what? Try to do the arm bar because that's the only way you're going to really develop it is if you can do it live. And since you've just learned it and your training partner knows you're going to try to do it, you're going to have about an 80% fail rate. You know what I mean? It's not going to be doable, but you're still going to learn something. So I trained with my son last night. I think it was last night, doing the same position. So for half an hour, we were on each other's back trying to make this happen, and I didn't armbar him once, Dan. But I got better at it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if I just said, screw it, I'm just going to try to do my old tried and true rear naked chokes or whatever, I wouldn't develop myself as much, you know? And that must apply in other parts of life, right?
Right. That's the second part of the title of the podcast, if you want to call it that.
Sure.
Right? Like, yeah, I guess it's under the theme of pushing yourself, right? Or finding limits to things, or finding
limits with that's the thing, Dan. So like, if I'm trying to hit some abstract mark, right? Even if it's a physical mark, if I undershoot it, I go, okay, I undershot it. I have to go further. Next time I go, oh, now I overshot it. All right, now I got to come back a little bit. So, like, the overshooting it, you could say, is analogous to getting tapped. You know what I mean? So if I'm never getting tapped, I'm never overshooting it, then I'm always undershooting it, and I'm not going to get to the absolute accurate point as fast as if I'm overshooting it sometimes and undershooting it, and then sort of narrowing my range and getting in there, right?
Right. So, like, if you're young, you approach, like, the most beautiful woman in the bar. And then later you're like,
she
okay,
laughs in your face.
Like, okay, that was
all right.
That was too much.
I don't qualify for that. Then you go to the least attractive woman, and she's like, hell yeah. You're like, all right, stay right here. I'll be back. And then you go to the second most attractive woman in the bar, get rejected from her.
You go to
the second least attractive, and then
find your zone.
I think there's a lot of wisdom to that, Dad. Yeah. Sounds very mechanical.
Maybe not literally that, but
yeah,
figuratively. Test your limits, though.
I think that's a cold truth, Dan, but it's true, right? Like, we all have some limit, some place that we can be. And, you got to go find out what it is, right? You can't find it out without some trial and error. And then that's a great place to be when you find out where you're supposed to be.
Because I think the majority of people, for sure, I would say, err on the side of not trying different things, where they're like, that's impossible. I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, everyone's overreaching and getting swatted down. Like,
well, all this stuff.
People limit themselves more than overreach.
Yeah, I think it's all on a bell curve, like all human behavior, right? All biological things can be plotted on a bell curve, but there's probably a bias to avoiding failure, right? Avoiding short-term failure. That's probably a typical bias that we have, right? Which probably doesn't serve you. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You know, before we had the academy, I had a translation company. We translated documents, and we started with just me and my business partner, and then we hired somebody, and we did pretty good. Next thing you know, we have a fair amount of people working for us, and then you know how it is. You got to let somebody go every once in a while because they can't do the job. You misjudge their abilities. And it was hard at first because it's a bummer when you fire somebody. You're like, oh, my God, can you come in? Can you see me before you leave today, Friday? You know what I mean? And
were you unable to sleep the night before firing someone?
Well, Dan, I'm a pretty compassionate person, so it sucked. But then I kind of figured out, I had a way of looking at it. I don't think it's a rationalization, because what I realized is that the people that we let go, they weren't going to be happy because they were failing. And if I kept somebody in a position where it didn't suit them and they were failing, I was actually doing them a disservice, you know. And in today's world, there's a job out there that suits them. And the longer I keep them in this one that doesn't suit them, I'm kind of keeping them from their rightful place.
That's what I, over time, came to realize, too, that it feels like when you're letting someone go and you're saying, oh, well, you know, it's just not a good fit. There's something better for you out there. It sounds like you're just saying the words. But what I came to realize is what you're saying, it's true.
It's definitely
true.
Like,
this isn't good. This isn't a good spot. You're not doing a good job here.
Dan, would you want to be in a job that you couldn't perform? What if they said, Dan, you're going to be the Turkish translator for the UN. And you're like, yeah, but I don't speak Turkish. We have a lot of confidence in you. Just give it your best efforts. And you're like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it would drive you crazy.
Have you ever, maybe you haven't. I've been in jobs that are almost like that.
Yeah.
Where they were like, it was like a startup, and then the thing I was supposed to do, kind of like making like statistical models for things, like that part, they're like, we don't have customers, so we don't need you to do that. They were like, so can you just write like this code, like write some C code, or C plus code? And I was like, well, I don't know how. And they were like, well, you're smart. Like, and it was the worst feeling, like sitting at the desk, like with a book, like little beads of sweat appearing, and I'm like, I don't know how to write code at all.
So crazy.
It's a terrible. I was like, get me out of here.
Feeling. Yeah.
Get me out of here. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so it would have been better if it was like, we don't have the right work for you, and
we're gonna let you
find a better job.
Yeah, find a better job. Yeah, I totally think that's the way to go. And then of course we were I think we were always pretty generous with the severance, so like nobody was getting crushed. And I mean, if it was a time of the depression where people are going to starve, that's a different story. But if it's like, yeah, there literally is another job out there for them. So yeah, that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, and if it's like you're not going to perform well at any job out there, which I guess there are some people like that.
Yeah,
and that's not really then that's your problem too. You know what I mean? It's like you're not going to perform well anywhere because you're just not responsible, and like it's like, well, that's not really my fault either.
Right. Yeah. But like you said, we have to find our level. Where do we fit? What is our possibilities? I mean, we can always get better. I'm always trying to get better, but yeah, we have to be realistic too, right?
Right. And in the specifics of to just circle back around to jiu-jitsu, it's basically, again, not just sticking with things you're good at,
right?
That are going to work, and just find your limits in all different positions of jiu-jitsu as well. Right?
One of the most successful competitors is guy Mikey Musumeci. So he's a 3-time world champion, and he's an American. So he's the only American to win 3 world championships. And I think he would tell you himself, he's a very nerdy guy. He's like this little guy with glasses, and he's super, super good. But he says he just loves learning about jiu-jitsu. So when he goes to the academy and learns something that he didn't know before, that gets him more excited than anything. So I think that's one of the reasons why he's a world champion. He's just so excited and invested in learning something new and getting better. And jiu-jitsu ultimately is very technical, so he doesn't get that excited by going and tapping people, so-called winning in the gym. He goes there and figures out something he hadn't figured out before. That gets him super excited. And I think that's the recipe for long-term success in jiu-jitsu, and probably in almost anything, because if you keep developing yourself, you're going to have your best performances. If you're a world champion caliber, if you keep developing yourself, then you end up winning the world championship,
Right. And then again, so one example would be if there's someone you usually can't pass someone's guard, and you do, one mindset is to celebrate, like, I passed this guy's guard. But if you're missing the value of, like, why was I able to do it this time?
That's the distinction, Dan. Yeah. Yes. You're excited that you figured out you solved the problem, not that you had the achievement. Yeah, that's huge.
Which makes sense too in the long term, because if you did it and you don't know why, maybe you're not going to do it again. You don't, if it's not something you can figure out that you did better.
You probably can't repeat it as much. Yeah. And if you figure out why, you can probably improve other aspects of your game using the concept in other places. And you're probably not going to be as consistent because you don't know why. If you're under stress, it might not happen. Yeah, the more deliberate you can be about things. So he talks about that, Mikey Musumeci. So I think I was talking to Amanda McQuade about this the other day in the academy, where, what part of your brain do you want to be in when you're doing jiu-jitsu? So we have this prefrontal cortex that does sort of the executive decisions and deliberate thinking, and then we have what some people call mammalian brain, reptilian brain, like that more inner brain. That's closer, I think, to your spinal cord, so it helps you react faster. And so I heard Gordon Ryan talking about what his mindset is like when he's competing. So he's currently considered the best in the world. And he says he tries to approach his matches in a deliberate, calm mindset as possible. So he would say he's operating from that prefrontal cortex as much as possible. And I believe he probably is. And I think when you're doing that, you can stay relatively calm, so you can be very efficient with your energy expenditure. Your heart rate and your breathing is probably going to be synchronized in the right way. You're not going to have too much of a stress response, so you can be very efficient with your energy. You can see what you need to see. But I think sometimes the game starts moving so quickly that you can't use your prefrontal cortex. You can't be deliberate. because that takes longer processing time than just being reactive and instinctive. So what Mikey Musumeci says is, he goes, I'll be having a match, and it'll be close, and all of a sudden I black out, and then when I wake up, I've won the match. And what I think he means is he's in his deliberate mind, and then things speed up so fast that he can't process the information with his deliberate mind. So then his sort of, his more primal mind just starts acting instinctively, and he does the right things, and then he wins. And he says in training, it happens. What he said in training, I guess, is that when he goes to that instinctive mind, that's where he can create new things. So, like, if you're acting deliberately, you can create new things, but it's a little slower. You know what I mean? So, like, for me to be in my deliberate mind when I'm rolling with somebody, I sort of have to be better than them. You know what I mean? So if I'm better than somebody, then I can kind of slow the game down, and I can see what's going on. And then I can try, well, what if I 2-on-1 on this hand over here instead of this one? And then I can be creative. But when you're acting from that non-deliberate part of your mind, that's where you can be really creative. Like, things just sort of happen. Like, you didn't even think of it. Like, your body and your nervous system just did something. And that can be very valuable, because then you could discover new things. You can create your own. And
you stop and go recreate it, and then you use your...
That's it. So in our academy, I came up with the phrase cognitive replay. So after you have some scramble like that where you're just acting instinctively and something really good happens, you can go, so what happened? Or even something bad happens, like, what? Oh, I stuck my arm over here, and then I got armbarred. Oh, right. So I can't do that. Yeah. So then what we try to do is we try to take that non-deliberate instinctive and pull it out of that part and put it into our deliberate brain.
Right. And you think most of the gym has a prefrontal cortex, right? Like, I think the vast majority
probably
of people in the gym have all these different brain structures. Because, if you're going to use all of them, you should be you're going to want to have them in the first place.
If you don't have it, it's going to be a little harder. Yeah.
But most of the listeners probably.
I think they do. Yeah. What do you think about that? Does that sound reasonable, what I just laid out?
Yeah, but it involves a lot of repetition, really. Work, like getting the right balance of when you go to one thing and when you use another. It takes you have to roll a lot. Right, like
I think so, and that's probably why. So Danaher says you should do 80% of your rolls with people you're better than. So I think that allows you to stay in that deliberate brain, and then you can innovate and experiment in a deliberate fashion.
Because if you're not that good, you can speed up and just speed up right into the wrong thing too, right?
Right.
You can just be like, my brain shut off, because I think that's happened with me as well. I'm like, I was thinking, and then my brain shut off, and I was acting on instinct, and next thing I knew, I was tapping.
Yeah.
Which is probably not the story that we're trying to...
Well, my experience has been that if you don't stop and try to remember what happened, it's difficult to remember. But if you make it a habit of stopping and trying to remember, you develop that facility. You start to be able to recall things better. And I find that super helpful. Yeah.
Because I remember, I think it's a skill that develops. Because I always thought, I remember talking to you and saying you seem to be good at it. Like, you could just replay a roll, and I'm like, I don't know what happened. Like, I was like, I was passing you, and then I was flip me over somehow, and then and then I'll be like, and then you got to side control, and you'll be like, I was in your half guard, something, and I'll be like, oh, like I didn't even have it right.
Right.
And you could seem to me to like replay the whole. Sometimes you'd be like, and then you'd also replay the role that was going on next to us. You'd be like, someone's talking there, and you're like, actually, what you did wrong. And I'd be like, wait, you know what happened in the role next to us? So I'm not even joking. Like, it seemed like you were really good at like replaying roles.
Maybe
like either your own or other people's.
Yeah. I think it's super beneficial. Yeah, definitely.
But part of that is mindset again, right? Like, if you're not, I think it's what you're saying. If you're not trying at all to track what's happening, you can't replay the role. You know what I mean? You're just sort of like, I don't know what happened, a bunch of scrambling around, and then.
I think, and the other big distraction, Dan, is our fear of losing status. I talk about that incessantly, it seems like here, but it's very true. I keep thinking, I tell people jiu-jitsu is like a virtual reality game where nothing bad happens. You feel like you're fighting, but nothing really bad happens to you. You don't get a concussion or a broken nose. So it's pretty cool in a way. And then I was thinking about, Danaher has this, he calls it the parable of the plank, where, if you're walking across a plank between two buildings at 10 stories high, most people couldn't walk across it. But if you put that same sort of like 12-inch wide plank on the floor in their living room, they could walk across it easily. Right. And I think most of us fear losing status like we're on a plank on a 10-story high building. And the reality is, no, we're on this plank on our living room floor. Right. If we fall off it, we almost have nothing to lose. There's losing esteem in the context of the jiu-jitsu gym by getting tapped or anything, it doesn't hurt you at all. But most of us unconsciously don't feel that. We don't recognize that, And I'm finding the more I can focus on discovering technique and teaching it and learning it myself, then I can forget about falling off that plank,
Yeah. I was also, one thing is, though, you also have to have some ability. So, like, say you're a white belt and someone just slices through your guard, you might replay it and be like, I don't know how to stop it, or like, I don't know what happened. And then that's where instructor comes in, and or experience comes in when you start learning. Because I would see that too, where, like, I remember, especially early on, like, someone throws your legs aside and gets past, and you're like, I don't know why do you do that? What did I do wrong?
Yeah, that's precisely when the instructor says, listen, you got to break the grips, keep your knees up, whatever the hell it is. Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So anyone that's, especially if there's a listener who's like white belt, they might be like, well, like, replaying doesn't solve everything for me. That's understood, right? Like, you could even ask the person who passed your guard, right? If you're in a friendly gym, which
I think so.
Most should be pretty friendly.
What I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of people on my back, and if I escape, then I immediately say, you know what? If you stepped on my hip here and brought your other foot up here, it would be way harder for me to escape this way. So, in a way, I get to drill my escape, and then I help them get better. And then the next time I go with them, it's even harder for me to get out. And it's sort of that, what do they call that, Red Queen dilemma, where we're both getting better. But yeah, that's the culture we have in my academy. And if you're in an academy that doesn't have that culture, I think they're doing you a disservice. Yeah, I always try to explain to people how I got over on them and what they could do to make it more difficult. Definitely, yeah. So your instructor and your training partner should be helping you with that. Then I have a good training practice all the time because I'm always figuring out something that I didn't know before. I think I used to get, there's a sneaky trap, Dan, where I would go with somebody that I'm better than, and then I would just effortlessly sort of roll with them, and I wasn't really developing anything, part of my game, and then I would feel really good about myself, like, wow, look at that. I didn't even sweat, and I could sweep that person and mount them, and I could do all this stuff. And I think that was kind of frivolous and kind of a vain pursuit, you know what I mean? Wasn't helping either one of us. But it's sneaky because it feels good, You're kind of flexing in a weird way, you know what I mean?
You're saying you could still be improving rolling with someone even if you're much better than them.
You could be more deliberate about it. Yes. And instead of focusing on, wow, look how good I am, I don't think that serves you. It's better to focus on figuring something out. Yeah. Just your own development and improvement. Yeah. So I think I'm doing a better job at that. So I feel good. I was listening to Brian Glick. He's one of Danaher's students. He was talking about this concept of becoming a better student. And it's exactly what I'm talking about. The more you can focus on development instead of these other sort of, you might say, ego-related things, where you're trying to gain status or you're afraid of losing status. Those things are a distraction from your own development, and they inhibit your development. So the more you can purely focus on developing yourself and helping your training partners develop, that's where you want to be. Yeah.
Today was some more new ways of doing that, is seeing it as a game.
Yep.
And seeing it and feeling free to tap as part of this mindset.
Right. Yeah. And you got to overshoot a little bit and undershoot. So there should be some, I don't know what the exact recipe of tapping should be, but if you're not tapping at all, that's probably not correct. Yeah. I mean, somebody asked Gordon Ryan on Instagram, does anyone tap you in training? He said, yeah, all the time. And this is the greatest competitor in the world.
I've heard it.
And he hates to lose.
Yeah.
So if he's putting himself in positions where he gets tapped, like, he's not doing it because he's humble pie or something, you know what I mean? He's only doing it to enhance his development.
Yeah, I heard someone say he might be the greatest to ever do it.
Probably right now, I think, Dan. Yeah. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to come along in 5 or 10 years that's even better. But right now, yeah, that's probably the way it works. So, Dan, I don't know. I think that's pretty good. What do you think? Should we wrap this up? So please subscribe. I think at last look, we're at 676 subscribers. So we get off that devil's number, but we got to get to 1,000, man. Then we can monetize this thing. So if you're listening to this, do me a big favor. Just subscribe. They don't even notify you anymore. It's almost meaningless, but please subscribe anyways and tell your friends about it. No downside.
What is it? 1 click, right?
1 click, definitely. And we'll see you next week.